With the help of Hashem, we are learning Megila Daf Koyach Daf Chav Ches. We left off on Daf Chav Zayin Amid Beis, towards the top of the Amid, starting with the second Mishnah. The Mishnah is going to enumerate the 4 restrictions for which, when one sells the shul, and again, we are continuously learning the Shita in Beshitas Chachamim, that when you sell the shul, if it's done by the trustees in the presence of all the townspeople, then the money couldn't be used for basically any activity, even mundane. The property, the shul itself, also is completely released from its prior kedusha, or at least almost completely. There are much less restrictions. Our Mishnah will continue behemshech to the beginning of this Perek, L'shitas Chachamim, that if the sale is done only by the trustees, not in front of the townspeople, or if the sale is done by the townspeople, not with the trustees, that is where the money remains holy, must be used only for something even holier, Mailan Bakoidish. And now we'll learn the same will be also regarding the shul itself, that we will have 4 restrictions. There are 4 usages for which that property may not be used for. That will be the sheet of the Chachamim. And we're going to learn Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, that has in it a stringency, and on the other hand, a tremendous leniency. We're going to learn a little bit about the rules of ribis. When I lend money, I should get the money back, but I cannot get anything back other than the money that I loaned. We're going to see how that is connected a bit to the topic of our Mishnah. And then we're going to begin towards the bottom of Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis, the beautiful sugya of Bameh He'erachta Yamim. This is a record of conversations between various Tanoim Amoraim, some of which lived a very long life. Their colleagues were curious to know in what merit did they have such a long life. And all of them mentioned either one character trait or various character traits. All of them are beyond the letter of the law, obviously. For doing the right thing, well, Mida Keneged Mida won't justify someone living beyond. Now we're speaking about people that lived really, there's a Rav Preda that lived for 400 years. We're speaking about long life that is completely beyond the laws of nature, at least as we understand it. And that's because that they behaved in ways that were also completely beyond their nature, or beyond the nature of their animal soul. We're going to have in that also included some Talmudic tips on how to become wealthy. Actually, being a good tipper, giving a good tip is one of them. We're going to have a very much repeated the concept that called hamayver al midoisov, people that are forgiving. They don't exact retribution. So Hashem in kind is forgiving to that person. And on Daf Chav Ches, on the Dalef in the bottom, we're going to have a new Mishnah that speaks about more restrictions that we have to keep in a shul, not by a sale. Stam, when you have an area that was designated for prayer, primarily a Beis HaKnesses, there's a very high level of Kedusha, very few things other than davening and learning, or basically nothing other than davening and learning may be done over there, and the Braisa is going to elaborate even more, and much, much more. So Chavra, let us start. We are on Daf Chav Zayin Amid Beis, towards the top of the Amid, beginning with the second Mishnah. Says the Mishnah, Ein moichlin Beis HaKnesses ela al Tanai, that when you sell a shul, we're beginning with the Shita of Rabbi Meir. According to most Rishonim, Rabbi Meir is so stringent, and he holds that even if you sell it by the trustees, in front of and in the presence of the townspeople, the money remains holy, the location remains holy, and not only that, but you may never sell a shul with the type of sale that makes that sale final. It always has to be sold on a condition, she'im yirtzu yachziru, that if the original owners will want to go back and repurchase it, obviously they will have to return that money, but they will get the shul back. And this is true even, as we learned in the previous Mishnah, that if you have a shul that's built in between 2 towns, a larger one and a smaller one, it's being sold by the larger town to the smaller town. It's going to be used mamish for the same thing. Shul, doesn't make a difference. Rav Meir holds that in order to show honor to the fact that this location is used as a Beis HaKnesses, if and when it's sold, it always has to be sold on such a stipulation. Now we don't paskin like that, but wow. Which means that it's never final. And now you'll see how this will go into the problem of interest. Because at a point, according to Rav Meir, if the original owners wants to repurchase it, all they need to do is to give the money that they received and they get their house back. Which really means that the buyers gave money, they got all their money back, and in the interim, they got to use the shul rent-free. That's where you got a problem of interest. We'll get to that in the Gemara. Now, the Chachamim disagree with Rav Meir. The Chachamim, no, that you make a sale, it can be of a permanent nature. However, but if it's not done in front of the townspeople, then you have the following 4 restrictions that must be articulated during the sale. The buyers must be aware that what? It may never be used. Lemerchatz, it may not be used for a bathhouse. It may not be used for a bursiki, for a location where hides were tanned into leather. It may not be used litfila for a mikvah. The kedusha of a mikvah is beyond what we can describe. Nevertheless, the fact that people go there ungarbed, since there was a shul, it's not respectful. And finally, ula beis hamayim, a home of water means a laundry mat. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda has a leniency and a stringency. Let's begin with the stringency. That moichlin oisol l'shem chatzar. Rabbi Yehuda holds that when a sale of a shul is made, you must verbally say that this is going to be used for something other than a shul. If they sold it without articulating that this will be used for something other than a shul, the buyers must use it for a synagogue. Now, when the Mishnah says that you sell it for the purpose of using it as a courtyard, it doesn't mean dafka a courtyard. It just means that you have to say during the sale that it's not going to be used for a shul. If those words were not uttered, and many times when you make a purchase, the buyer is not obligated. The buyer doesn't mention for what he'll be using his location, but you have to when it comes to a shul. That's the stringency. The leniency is that, let's say we articulated, this is the example, it's being sold, the buyers will make it into a yard. The buyers now can do with it whatever they want. It's not called disrespectful. It's only if during the sale we're saying, we're selling it for a tannery. That's disrespectful. But as long as during the sale it was, number one, we said that the buyers are going to be buying it for something mundane. They didn't say then that they're going to be using it for something that we consider disrespectful, these 4 items. So the sale is kosher. Now that the sale is done, the entire Kedusha went away. Now that the entire Kedusha went away, the buyers are not bound by any restrictions. Okay. Says the Gemara, according to Rav Meir, that you have to make it clear, and the halacha is that when you sell a shul, the original owners always retain the right to repurchase it. And repurchasing it means for the same amount of money. Not that we can repurchase it, but now real estate went up and you pay more money. So let's say Reuven and Shimon, town Reuven, town Shimon. Reuven sold it to town Shimon. They sold it for $100. That means Reuven received $100. All Reuven needs to do is give back the $100 and they get their shul back. It sounds fine and dandy, but it's not. Because now it's going to come out that Shimon gave money, got the money back. It's almost like retroactively, it's like a loan. But they got to live in the shul without paying rent. So they got their money back plus rent-free. That's called interest. So Amar Rabbi Yechanan, says Rabbi Yechanan, it must be that Rabbi Meir Beshitas Rabbi Yehuda Amar, he follows here like the opinion that's known in the name of Rabbi Yehuda that holds the Amar Tzad Echad Beribas Muter. Tzad Echad Beribas means that if there's only one scenario in which there'll be ribis, the other scenario will not lead to ribis. That's not the problem, even if de facto it leads into what appears to be interest. Now, our case is a fantastic example because when town Reuven sold it to town Shimon, if Reuven does not buy it back, it's a sale. There is no ribbis. It's only if they decide to repurchase it, then you have ribbis. The case of Rabbi Yehuda is as follows. The Tanya. Right? Let's speak about $100. Again, Reuven, let's say Reuven loaned to Shimon $100. Shimon owed him $100. Shimon is not paying back. The debtor, Shimon, owns a piece of real estate. Shimon tells Reuven, please stop harassing me. Here, see this piece of real estate. Give me another 30 days, or 5 days, or a year. If by then I don't give you back the $100, then this land, this property, this real estate is yours. And they both consented. Now, same issue over here. Says the Tana, as long as the borrower continues to use that property until that date, no problem. No problem. They both agreed to that. Obviously, the real estate is more or less the value of the loan, so that's fine. But if the purchaser, which is the lender, if he's going to be the one that's going to be using that property until that final date, that's prohibited. Makes a lot of sense. Why is it prohibited? Because if at the end Shimon is going to pay the money back and get that property back, so what? At the end of the day, what happened? Reuven lent money, he got that money back, plus the interim, the use of a piece of real estate. That's called ribis. So you can't allow for that to happen. Here is where Rabbi Yehuda says, no, afilu lekeach oichel peiros is still mutter. That's the tzad echad, because it's not for sure going to be interest. Here the tzad echad means that maybe he's not going to pay him back. And if the borrower will not pay him back, so then this property is going to be the ownership, it's going to belong now to the lender. There's no ribis. He loaned $100 and he got the $100 back worth in real estate. And not only does Rabbi Yehuda say his opinion, but he brings a story to prove that his opinion is accepted. For Rabbi Yehuda, Maisa, it happened. Bebaisus ben Zunain, that one she'aso sodeo mecher, he borrowed money, he was unable to pay. So to appease his creditor, they made this deal again. Give me another 30 days, and if by then I won't pay you back, my land will be yours. And it was done under the hashgacha of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He was the Rav. And during that time, the lokeach was eating the peiros. Well, the peiros means he was using the property, and it was all fine and dandy. Why it must be? Because ribis b'tzad echad is not a problem. Now, Amru Loi, the ones who argued with Rabbi Yehuda, told him, your story is not correct. Misham Raya, there it was the opposite. Moicher is the borrower, was the one that was using the peiros until that final date, not lokeach. And my benayu, what's the underlying machlokes? Tzad echad beribas ikebenayu. Mar sovar tzad echad beribas muter, umar sovar tzad echad beribas aser. So is now the answer of the Gemara, right, of Rabbi Yechanan. Says the Gemara, Rava Amar. Rava disagrees with the understanding that Rabbi Yechanan has in this brayso. Rava holds that everyone holds tzad echad beribas aser. And the machlokes in this brayso is ribis al manas lahachzet ichebenayu. In the case that the brayso is discussing, and in the story, what happened again is Reuven loaned Shimon money. Shimon doesn't have the money to pay back whenever they were expecting for the money to be paid back. So Shimon, the borrower, is telling the lender, give me another amount of time. And the lender is getting nervous. So the borrower says, you know what? If by then I won't pay, then this piece of property will belong to you. If the lender, which is also now perhaps going to be the buyer, will already as of now use the property, if at the end indeed the borrower will pay the money back, the borrower will get the property back, the lender will have to give him the value of the rent. He'll have to, if it was actually a field that gave produce, he'll have to pay for the produce. That's why it might be permitted. Now, why might it not be permitted? Because even though he's going to give it back, he got it. So the question is, when you receive something that is in addition to the money that you loaned, even if you are going to return it, there is a machlekes whether that's problematic or not. That's called miribis almanas lahachzer ichbenayu. Mar sovar ribis almanas lahachzer muter. That's the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. Umar sovar asur. And by the way, Rava therefore will explain that our Mishnah will also be that Rav Meir follows the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. And if the synagogue will be repurchased, then that's the pshat according to Rava. Then the buyers will have to now pay retroactively all of the rent for it not to be ribis. So either it's not a problem to begin with, or the money has to be back, and when the money is paid back, then you don't have a problem with ribis. Last narrow line. The Chachamim, Oimnim, they argue with Rav Meir and they hold that when a shul is sold, even though our case is, it's not even being sold by the trustees in front of the townspeople, it's a binding sale with the 4 restrictions. Says the Gemara, all of these 4 restrictions have to do with the kedusha of the place of the shul. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, muter lo adam lahashtin mayim b'toich daladam shel tefillah. A person is allowed to urinate within the same daladamas in which the person previously said a prayer, because it does not degrade that location, and therefore you can daven there. Fragt the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yosef, you're right, but why do I need Shmuel to say it? It's a Mishnah. Tanina, Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, moichrin oisel l'shum chatzar, even if you have a permanent shul, as long as the stipulation was verbalized during the sale that it's going to be used for something other than a shul, and in the stipulation the example that was given was a respectful example, then according to Rabbi Yehuda, the buyer, after they buy it, they can make over there even a tannery. They can make over there a bathroom. And even the Chachamim in our Mishnah, they argues that Rabbi Yosef that doesn't agree with this leniency of Rabbi Yehuda. It's oloi ka'amni ella, because we are speaking about a Beis HaKnesses, the kevia kidushase. Avol daladamis, imagine you're out there in the field, you're going on a hike, and the person relieved oneself. What? Certainly there is no inherent problem by using the same location to daven, and then at another time to relieve oneself. There's no permanent kedusha. So in other words, what Rabbi Yosef is saying, he's not arguing with, he's finding the statement unnecessary. Now listen to this. Tana Kamed Rav Nachman. So you had this brilliant memory machine of Ayid that knew all of the braises by heart. And he was in charge of sitting in the yeshiva of Rav Nachman and chazering all these braises. And this is the braisa that he quoted from his memory. Hamispalel, when you daven, you have to distance yourself daladamis and only then urinate. And when a person urinates, they have to distance themselves 4 amas and then daven. Again, we're not speaking about a permanent shul. So this is the braisa that he's quoting. Dafka, not the way we learned above. So Rav Nachman hears this, and many times, as great as a memory as these people had, sometimes they made a mistake, or sometimes their teacher made a mistake. So Armalei, Rav Nachman tells this Tana teacher, Bishlei Mahamashtin, I get one part of what you said, I can accept that when a person urinates, he should walk away daladamas umispalel. Tanina, you can base this on a Mishnah that tells us, Kama yarchik mehem uminatsoya daladamas. Still, there are opinions that hold, especially when there's a bad odor, or if before the urine gets absorbed in the ground. Okay, I got it. Don't daven in the same 4 cubits. Avalam espalel marchik daladam is what you're telling me, that when you daven, you finish davening. You have to walk away 4 amas umashtin. Why? Again, we're not speaking about a permanent place designated for prayer. You're going on a hike, and a person davened in a certain spot. There is no permanent kedusha. Why would he have to walk away to urinate? And ihachi, if davening one time or a few times, but not ba'oifen kavua, if that imbues that location with kedusha, so then kadishtinu l'chula shvila de Narda, the entire village of Narda is holy. Because during the history of the Yidden in Narda, there isn't a little crevice, a little alleyway in which there wasn't a minyan once. So you're telling me that if a person is in Narda and they have to urinate, they have to go out of the city? Of course not. So your version is wrong. Now the bottom, the widest line. Tanei amend. The Baraisa actually is not speaking about walking away the distance of, but Yishem. We're speaking about waiting the time that it takes to walk Daladamis, which I know is a few seconds, but that's what it is. Wait. Now we have to go, but now let's understand the Baraisa in both ways. So now let's work it out, says the Gemara. Bishlema mashtin, now we're quoting. When the original version was mashtin, Yashe, Kedehi Luch Daladamas. Person urinates, they should wait a few seconds before they daven. That makes sense. Why? Mishum Nitzaitzes. Because especially when people get older, their body doesn't have the koyach of expelling all of the urine in one go. Could be you think you finished urinating, and there's a couple of droplets that are still leaving your body. You don't want for that to happen when you're davening. So, urinate, wait a couple of seconds, and then resume the tefillah. That makes sense. But the other way doesn't make sense. Elam espalal, if you daven, you finish davening. Why do you have to wait the time that it takes to walk daladamis? Lamali. You finish davening, urinate. Amar Ravashi says, Shekol daladamis tfilasei sedura befiv. Especially when it comes to prayer, when we are saying words that we are habituated to say, we all know the tefillahs by heart. Even when you think that you stop davening, there are times that your lips are still moving, and you're still saying a few words of tefillah. Amazing. Your lips are still articulating the words. Many times it happens even when you learn, even when you're not that familiar with the words. When you're into something, you're not a machine. I finished davening, boom, urinate. No, wait the time that it takes to walk daladamis. Only then can you be certain that your lips stop saying words of kedusha. Okay. Now, Zalfon Simon, this is a very important Gemara. This is all about behaviors. This is a piece of Pirkei Avos, a Talmudic Pirkei Avos. Behaviors that are beyond the letter of the law, even though some of them sound like the letter of the law, they'll have to be explained, and they are connected to one's living a long life, lamata masara tvach. Sometimes we have the concept that when the Torah says living a long life, sometimes a long life can mean in the next world. This is a long life over here. So this is the Jewish long life program. It's not about eating healthy, it's not about sleeping enough time. It's about behaving. Sha'alu Talmidav es Rabbi Zakkai, b'meh herachta yomim, for what did you merit long life? Amar lehem, so he said the following. Number one, miyamai lo hishtanti mayim b'toich taladam shel tefillah. Here you see the link. Even though we just learned above that if you daven not in a permanent shul, you daven you're davening you're taking a hike, you're traveling in the airport. He never would urinate in that daladamas. Even though by the letter of the law you finish davening, there was no kedusha anymore. He would walk away 4 cubits. Number two, I never coined a nickname to my fellow. Now the topic of nicknames, the third to last place was quotes from Bava Metzia. You have a Gemara that tells us by the letter of the law that if someone uses a derogatory nickname for his fellow, that's if it's derogatory. If the nickname is not derogatory, then by the letter of the law, there's nothing wrong with me using a nickname. He went beyond the letter of the law. And there's an inyan, there's a koyach, and there's a power in someone's real name, the name in Lashon Kodesh. There's a koyach to that. And if I'm calling you, and this, according to some, means that Daniel Yitzchak Yisrael, Ad Kedei Kach, Avraham Meir, it's somehow that it's beyond the letter of the law. Call other people by their full Jewish name. This is beyond the letter of the law. We know the Rebbe was not called by his whole name. But when you use that, and certainly not to use a nickname. Certainly not to use a nickname. Lifnimi Shura Sadin. It's an amazing concept here. Next, we have to move. And also, listen, he never made Kiddush Shabbos day, not on wine. Even though we know, Bekitzer, that the Kiddush of Friday night is Doiraisa. Kiddush Rabbah actually means the Kiddush of Shabbos day is Midrabanan. By the letter of the law, there are many leniencies that you can use for the Kiddush Shabbos day, beginning with wine or challah. it's much less problematic to use challah during day, even though if you don't have wine at all, you can even make Kiddush on challah Friday night. There are certain communities that they make Kiddush on mashke Shabbos day, not Friday night. By the letter of the law, wine, you can circumvent the wine. His chumrah, his lifnim, Yeshua Sadin was, he mamish, you will see, he sold items to have money to buy wine, to make Kiddush on wine. And he learned that from his mother. And you'll see over here, not only did he live a long life, he became wealthy because of it. Ima Zakena. Now there's a machlekes. Either Ima Zakena means that he had an elderly mother, or Ima Zakena means his baba, his old mother, meaning his grandmother, whichever one it is. Ima Zakena, hoiseli. I had, an elderly mother or a grandmother. And Pamachas, there was a time that there wasn't enough money for Shabbos day wine for Kiddush. Machra kipa shebaroisha. She sold her tichel. She sold something that's the last thing that you sell. That was like a personal item. And vehevili Kiddush hayom, and she bought me wine. She didn't even make Kiddush. She made sure that her son or her Enikol should have wine, dafka wine. And let me add a detail. If there's no issues with yayin that's not mavushal, the en kanamakoim, yayin that's not mavushal, so says the Alter Rebbe. These are behaviors lifnim Yeshua Sadin. And we learned, not only did he live a long life, but because of this last midah, that this woman, when she passed away, she was blessed with wealth. Kishemesa, heinichaloi, Meya Garbiyayin, she left as a Yerusha 300 barrels of wine. Her financial circumstances got substantially better. And not only that, but Keshemesu, when Abzaki passed away, he continued these minhagim, the wealth accumulated. Hiniach Laban, he left for his children, Shloishes Alafim Garbiyayin, 3,000 barrels of wine, a fortune of money. But it's beautiful, not a fortune of gold, not a fortune of silver, a fortune of wine. Hashem made sure that family will always have wine to make Kiddush. Yovaldik. Next, Rav Huna. Hava aser risa. Rav Huna once put on a grass belt, a grass gartel, and he stood in front of his teacher Rav. In other words, normally a belt is made out of material. Only the very, very poor who cannot afford material have some sort of, they take a branch and they make a gartel. And Rav Huna normally had his gartel. So Amalei, so Rav asked his Talmud, what happened? So Amalei, same thing. Lo yahavali kiddusha. I had no money to buy wine for the Shabbos day kiddush. He took a gamach. In those days, when you got a loan, everyone wanted collateral. Nebach, he needed to give his gartel for collateral. You can just imagine how little the money was. Collateral. Umashkante, and I gave as a mashkin lehem yonai, my belt, my gartel. And I bought Kiddush. Rav was so inspired because he didn't have to, by the letter of the law, he could have made Kiddush on bread. He borrowed money, giving up his gartel. So Rav told the student, Yehi Rava, may it be the will of God, the sitoim b'shiroi, that you should be covered in silk garments. You should become that wealthy. And it came to fruition. And here's the story that Ki Ikalal Rabba Bereid Rafuna Isha Gutza, when Rafuna, the short Rafuna, there were different Rafunas, we are identifying him. When his son Rabba was going to the chuppah, when he was getting married, Hava Gana Apuria, the father Rafuna was laying down, and they needed, he was probably, there wasn't blankets wherever he went. Mistama, it was an out of town wedding. He went to lay down, and Asyon ben Nasi v'Kalosei, so his daughters and his daughter-in-laws went, and Sholchan v'Shadyon minayu olei, they took off their beautiful extra over garments made out of silk. They covered their father-in-law, ad the itam b'shiro, until he was fully covered with silk. So the words of Rav became realized. He was covered. Only wealthy people had that much silk. When they're shearing garments that they didn't even need, it was all silk garments. And when Rav heard that his bracha came true, he became upset. Why was he upset? So he tells Rafuna, "My tamaloi omrat li ki berachticha." When I gave you the bracha, why did you not tell me v'chein lemar? Rashi explains something amazing. You see, Rafuna understood that the bracha is going to happen because of the greatness of Rav. Rav was very humble. Rav didn't consider his bracha to be special. Rav says that sometimes when even a hedyot gives a bracha, if the timing is right, if it's an eis ratzon, the bracha is going to come true. The fact that Rav said to himself, if my bracha came true, wasn't me. It was the time. Since it was a time, it was an Eis Ratzin, even though Rav Huna was not on the level of Rav, to Rav it's not about the person. If Rav Huna would have said, V'chein lamar, I also would have become wealthier. And we had this concept here in Megillah, and we had it in the beginning in Brachas Daf Zayin, right in Rabbi Shmuel Kohen Gadol, that Al Tehei Birchas Kala Hedyet Beinecha says that Agachover, it goes on the one giving the brach, give brachas. So that's a good thing. Someone gives you a bracha, the Rebbe's nusach is to be V'chol HaMevarech Mizbarech, because there you're adding, because the bracha of Hashem is even greater than the bracha of a human being. But this midah is learned from this story. 3 lines from the bottom. Sha'alu talmidav she'es Rab Elazar ben Shamua b'meh harachti yomim. So number 1, Amar lahem yomai lo yasisi kapandari ala beis hakneses. I never made the shul into a shortcut. But there are many halachas about this. I want to tell you that there are certain settings, especially if, let's say by us, I'll give you an example. If the Sephardic shul would have been built before our Chabad shul, and originally the opening room would have been used as a social hall, even if later it would have been made into a shul, halachically it would not be a problem to use it as a shortcut. There are many times where halachically you can use a shul as a shortcut. Even in those circumstances, he did not use it as a shortcut. You know what you do? I'm just saying by us. You know what you're supposed to do? It's not that you can't walk through it. You're not going to walk to the alley every time. No, is when you go into the shul, you sit down and say a pasuk. Sit down and say a short tefillah. Then you're not making it into a shortcut. Then because of you being in this location, you're adding a few words, either of tefillah, of Torah tefillah, or give tzedakah. You're doing something which makes this a destination, and then you go to the back. He was very makbid on that. Number 2, v'loi pasati al roshei am hakodesh. I never stepped over the people's heads, the holy people's heads. Again, those of us who merited to be with the Rebbe in 770, how do you get to your place? That's the way you did it. You would, you wouldn't stand on a person's head, hopefully, only b'shoigeg. You would stand on the top of the bench, and you would go to the other top of the bench, and you're walking over people. And he gave the class. He made sure that he never, we learned, where did we learn, Danny, that there was an Amoida that during the class, when he needed to urinate, he urinated at his location. The Talmidim stood around him, they faced the other direction. And why? First of all, the whole idea that when you have to go to the bathroom, we learned this, I think, in Brachas, right? That lo yevacha akar valtashaksu. But aside of that, he didn't want to inconvenience the people, nor did he want to walk over people. Respect to your fellow Yid. You come late to the class, I'm sorry, you can't go to your makam kavua. It's very difficult. Stand in a way where you're not walking over people. And number 3, now don't forget that Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua was a kohen. That I never gave birchos kahanim without giving a bracha. Here everyone asks, whoa, where is the lefnim yishuras hadin? That's the problem here. Well, it's everything we're learning, and we have another good half an hour. The whole Chavches Amadal of a beautiful midos toivos, Pirkei Avos of Gemara. So just the one, there's so many approaches that it means that when the kohen says ba'ahava, do we have a kohen over here? It wasn't words, that the kohen felt love to everyone in the shul. So in other words, the bracha was a real bracha. That's a big level. That's mamish beyond the letter of the law. Sometimes you don't know, how can you love people? B'chal mitzvahs on feelings, that's a big Hasidic topic. How do you get there? You have to be mizbainin, you have to learn Tanya until Perek Lamed Beis to finally reach the Madrega of Avos Yisrael. He fulfilled that in full fruition. Last line. Sha'alo Talmid of Rabbi Pereida. Now, Chevra, we had Rabbi Pereida in the Sugyan Eruvin. If you remember that he used to teach a student of his a topic 400 times. Because that student at that time had a difficulty grasping. And there was a certain distraction that after the 400 times, the Talmud says, Rebbe, Nacha 400 times. And the patience of Rabbi Pereida. And when he did it again, a heavenly voice came out and asked him, what do you want? Do you want for you and your whole generation to merit the world to come? Or do you want to live 400 years? Rav Pereida responded, I want that my whole generation should merit the world to come. God said, yeah, I'm going to give you both. So we have a Gemara that says that Preida lived for 400 years. We know why. So the problem is when the Gemara says that the students asked Rabbi Preida, why are you living so long? Why do we have a question? We know the answer from Eruvin. Right? Megila comes after Eruvin. Answers to Isvis. Look at the humility of Rabbi Preida. He had other behaviors that he did. He didn't, if this was asked, not when he was 350 years old. There came a certain point where he knew, Take, I'm living that long because of the bracha that God gave me. This is before. He was probably 80 years old or 90 years old. It was still within the realm of natural. And he felt that it wasn't because of that. He was very humble. So he answered, no one came to the Beis Medrash before Rabbi Preida. He was always the first one in the house of study. Daf Chav Ches, finally today's daf on top. Whenever there was a kohen in our meal that ate together, I never led the zimun in the presence of a kohen. And the Gemara is going to ask, that's not beyond the letter of the law. That's the letter of the law. Whenever there's a kohen in the group, the kohen has to be honored. And the answer is no. The answer is that if the kohen is not learned, however you define that, and you are a Talmud Chacham, you're not allowed to give it to the kohen. We're going to get to that in a moment. But he behaved in a way where it was beyond the letter of the law. And next, this is very important. It's very difficult to explain why nowadays we don't give the matanos. And we'll speak about it in another time. We spoke about it in Chulin. By Torah, by the rules of God, when you have a domesticated animal, animals from the family of cattle and sheep and goats, and you shech the animal, we're speaking about Chulin. There are 3 parts of the animal that have to be gifted to a kohen, and according to many opinions, even b'chutz la'aretz. Now, here's the key. When it comes to produce, and we have to separate the tithing, before you separated the truma, etc., the produce is called tevel. A kohen cannot eat from it, even though the separation will be going to the kohen. Doesn't matter. Rashi says because when is a kohen allowed to eat truma? After it was separated. Prior to its separation, even the kohen cannot eat it. Tosfos says, no, before you separate it, it's not called truma, it's called tevel. Tevel is like another category. So when it comes to produce, prior to the separation, a kohen can eat. What about by meat? We're not familiar with this because now we find Tatum not to have to give matanis b'chlal, even though throughout history there were great Jewish people that gave these gifts, but without the heter. So by the letter of the law, as we'll see, even prior to you giving the right forearm and the jaw with the tongue and the stomach called the keva, the muah, zroya l'chaim, even prior to giving it, you can eat another part. You can have a piece of the shoulder. His chumrah was that he never ate any meat of an animal prior to you removing its gifts. Because he went and he followed that minority opinion. And it's mamish like eating tevel. And we also know that we don't paskin that way. In other words, Rav Preida, and nevertheless, Rav Preida, right, behaved like the minority opinion, even though he was not obligated. Now, let's go back. Asks the Gemara, the second statement he made was that he never benched in the presence of a kohen. Whoa, now Rav Preida was the greatest scholar. This l'chayda is not only not a beyond the letter of the law, this is wrong. Is this okay? If there's a Talmud Chacham and anyone other than the Talmud Chacham, someone else is leading the benching, then the one who said the zimun actually was the only one that said the words of Birchas Hamazon. Everyone listened. Shemei Ka'ina. The Alter Rebbe says we don't do it nowadays because we don't have the koyach to concentrate for a couple of minutes, and if we don't listen clearly to every word, then we don't get the mitzvah. But still, the zimun, the leader has to be the Talmud Chacham. Rabbi Yechanan says, "Kol Talmud Chacham shemevarech lefanav," even a kohen gadol. But the kohen gadol is halachically called an Am Haaretz, whatever that would mean. The Talmud Chacham is chayev misa. Wow. Shemar, as it says, King Solomon says, Kol misanai, those who hate me, this is the Torah speaking. Torah says, whoever hates me loves death. And Chazal interpret al tikra mesanai, but it also elam maseniai, those who make others hate me. Like Rashi says 3 lines from the top, people who behave in a way where they don't lift up the value of the Torah. They degrade the value of the Torah. This person, this Talmud Chacham, he's not going for his own honor. I have to bench because I'm the Talmud Chacham. It's about the honor of the Torah. So why was the Rav Preida even allowed to have someone else bench in front of him? Answers the Gemara, ki ka'amar iu bishavin. When you have an Amaretz, the Talmud Chacham has to lead the benching. What happens if 2 people are equal? Tosfos says on the top, not equal. It can't mean equal. Equal means that the Kohen, he's not on the level of Rav Preida, but he's not an Amaretz. That is where, by the letter of the law, the Talmud Chacham could bench, because he's a greater Talmud Chacham. He went beyond the letter of the law and he gave it to the Kohen. Honoring the Kohen gave him long life. Next, in what era did you live a long life? I never derived honor from my friend's shame. We'll see soon an example of that. I never went to sleep with a curse that was given to me on my heart. We'll see, again, he was very forgiving. Dafka before he went to sleep. We have this incorporated in the Kriya Shema Shel Amita. We'll unpackage every one. And number 3, Vatran b'mamayni hayisi. I was very liberal with my money. In other words, I was the opposite of stingy, as we'll see. And all of that gave him long life. Number 1, I never derived honor from my friend's shame. What's the example? That Rafuna was once carrying a utensil of work, a spade, on his shoulder. And also Rabchana Bar Chaniloi, another Amoira, a colleague of his, walked by and Rafuna, let me carry it for you. Now, this Rab Chana is also was a great Amoira. So Amalei Rafuna tells him like this: if in your city you regularly carry work utensils, in other words, you're not offering to do something for me that for you is considered for you disrespectful, then I thank you. Antaka schlepp it, carry it for me. But the Eloi, if not for me, if you on your own, because of your own dignity, certain people should not work in public. Then he says, then isyakure ana bizilusa didach loy nicholi. I don't want to benefit by me not having to do manual work in public, by you doing manual work in public. Wow. And by the letter of the law, Rafuna was the head. Rafuna, right, he became ultimately the Rosh Hashiva and Surah. He would have been allowed to receive this kindness and not schlep. It's not just about his honor. He's the big Rosh Hashiva, he's schlepping in the public, but he didn't do that. Number 2, so what does that mean? That's similar to, but even greater than Kihad Marzutra. That when Marzutra, Kihav Salik Lipuria, when he would go into his bed, he would say, I forgive anyone who aggravated me today. I'm moichel everyone. Now he went more than that. There's someone aggravated me and I forgive him. What about if someone cursed me, God forbid? That's worse. Even if someone cursed him, he forgave him at night. That was his midah. Every night, he never went to bed with a grudge on any yid. Number 3, he was very liberal in his spending. To Amar Mar Ioiv, who was very wealthy, other than that period of time. And how do we know that? Where do we see that he was very liberal in his money spending? He would leave a tip. And we're not speaking about tipping a waiter. That because the waiter is giving you a service. He went into a store. You're paying for your food. Here in LA and in most Yiddish places, you go into these kosher markets, are you paying for your food? He would still leave a tip. That's a big thing. He would add noch a few dollars. So when he asked him that question, that's going to get a little bit humorous. When I ask you, why are you living that long? So there's 2 ways that you can understand my question. Number 1 is, I want to learn some good behavior from you because I want to live long, or it's bothering me that you're living that long. Like, why are you living that long? So it's almost a little bit humorous. So when Rabbi Akiva Tanoim, when he asked Rab Nechunya, why are you living that long? The Talmidim, the Hasidim of Rab Nechunya, they heard some sort of like, you don't want our Rebbe to live long? So Asu Gavzei, the servants went to hit him. These menagim you find in certain groups. The Hasidim are standing up for the cover of the Rebbe. And just imagine the picture. Rabbi Akiva needed to run up a palm tree. Amazing. And Salik Yosef Aresha the Dikla. Rabbi Akiva, to save himself from the wrath of the Hasidim of the other Rebbe, he escaped by running up. Now there's a mystical meaning over here. Tzaddik Katamar Yifrach. Rabbi Akiva did something that made it clear that he's a very high tzaddik. And what happened was, Amalei, Rabbi Akiva from the top of the palm tree is continuing to tell Rab Nechunya, Rebbe, answer me this question. It says in the portion of Pinchas, when it comes to offering the daily tamid, it says as hakeves ha'echad taseh b'boiker, etc., etc. Now, keves, lamb, is already in the singular. Kesev, echad, the echad is superfluous. Because not ksavim, im keves, since the Torah says keves in the singular, lama nemar echad. Now there's a deep meaning. And amalahu. So first of all, when he heard that question, so Rab Nechunya understood tsurba min rabbananu. This Rabbi Akiva, he's a tzaddik, he's a scholar. Don't beat him up. Shafku. And amalei. And now Rab Nechunya answers this question, not the first question. Whether Rabbi Akiva is still on top of the tree or he's going down, he says, Echad means miyuchad shebeidroi. Echad means you have to give the choicest lamb. And I think the inner meaning is Danny's not happy with my word choicest. I see, at least I can say I know it. The best, the miyuchad, the unique, the singular. So far so good. So what it really means is that there's a tzaddik, many tzaddikim, but then they have the meyuchid. You have someone that's singularly the Rebbe, the Rosh B'nai Yisrael. No, it's the midas that we are speaking about. It's not enough for you to be a tzaddik. There has to be something unique, something singular. And now that's what he's going to speak about. Amalei, this is still Rab Nechunya telling Rabbi Akiva, Meyomai lo kibalti matanis. I never received the gift. Who do you have to be a tzaddik for this? Number two, v'lo yamalati al nidoise. I never insisted on exacting retribution. Gewalt. He never bore a grudge, he forgave. And number three, Vatran b'mamoyin ha'yisi. He was very liberal with tzaddikim. Many of the Hasidic Rebbes, they never went to sleep if they had money in their house. Can you imagine? They gave it all away. They gave it out to tzedakah. So the Gemara says, hold on. Where do we find that? When the house of the Nasi, when the Jewish government would send the great Rabbi Lazar gifts, lo have a shekel. He did not receive it. Now here you're playing with fire, because sometimes you don't receive a gift, you are insulting. He never received gifts. Not only that, when they would invite him to join them for a meal, even that lo have a uzzle. And whoever read, and you should read the Frierdiker Rebbe's memoirs, that's speaking about the father of the Alter Rebbe of Baruch, speaking about this midah that he had, that he never received gifts, that I think it was the Alter Rebbe Zayda, even when he got married, he told his shver and shviger that he will never eat on their table without him paying for his meal. That's these midas. And Amar Lahu, and he would not tell him, you're inviting me? You don't want me to live? You're trying to invite me to a meal? It says, King Solomon says, Soinim Atanas, that those who hate gifts, Yichya, they live. So don't even invite me. He told him, he reprimanded them for inviting him. Now some people read the pasuk B'lashon Bitmiya that Soina Matanis Yichya Tzeden Kemen Leben as Benetnish Kematana, but he read it Benichusa. Rab Zera was similar but not completely. If the house of the government, of the Jewish government, would send him a gift, Lehav a shakel. When they brought the Rebbe the new Cadillac, he didn't take it. The Rebbe said Soina Matanis Yichya. But if he was invited to eat, he would come, he would take the invitation. Why would he take the invitation? Because Rab Zera considered his being a guest in your house, not that he was receiving from you and you're giving him the big gift. The opposite. Rab Zera says that when I go to you, I am giving you the covet. Amar isyakure de misyakribi. That they are honored by my presence. I'm the giver, they're the receiver. It's not a problem with Sleinim Atoynes Yichya. Number two, the first widest line, the Amar Rava, guys, look in Rosh Hashanah and in Yuma, we have the statement that Kol HaMavir Al Midoisav, people that are forgiving, even though they had the right to bear a grudge, but they go beyond that. So God reciprocates in kind, that even if we did something for which God, Kaviyachol, can have a grudge, God is forgiving. Mavir Mimenu Kol Peshav. Shneimar, as it says, that noisi ovain voiven al pesha. Now the pshat is both of these attributes are in reference to God, that God forgives transgressors, that God passes over iniquity. The drasha is lemi noisa ovain. Whose sins does God tolerate or does God forgive? For the other shoiven al pesha, oiven al pesha. That means even if someone bepshia wronged you, when we are able to reach the level where, like the Alter Rebbe explains, they get us chafei to understand that Hashgacha Pratis, it wasn't that person who wronged you, they have no power to wrong you, it's all God's doing, you deal with God. It's a whole different conversation. When you reach that level, then God becomes extremely forgiving to you. Shal, Rebbe, es Rabbi Shua ben Karcha. Now conversations of Tanoim invited, another Tana and Tana. Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, ba meherach yomim. Here Rabbi Yeshua ben Karcha, not as Hasidim, said, Katzto b'chayai, what, you don't want me to live? What kind of question is that? So Amalai, no, Rebbe, Toirihi, v'limodani tzarech, you should live forever. Chaim Nitzchiyim, Mashiach should come. I want to understand, what did you do? What do you do? What type of behavior beyond the letter of the law that brings about long life? Amalai, so he tells him like this, I never gazed at a wicked person. You're not allowed to look at the face or look deeply at the face of a wicked person. Shneimar, as it says, and this is when Yehoshaphat, who was a kosher king, came together with Yehoram the Rasha, Ben Achav the Rasha, when they came to Elisha, and Elisha said to both of them that Lule Pnei Yehoshaphat Melech Yehuda Ani Noisei. The prophet Elisha says, if I would not hold in esteem your colleague Yehoshaphat, you think I would look at you, Yehoram? I wouldn't look at you, I wouldn't gaze at you, I would ignore you, because I'm not allowed to look at the face of Adam Rosh. Rabbi Lazar Amar, another thing, that if a person looks at the face of a person who's wicked, enough chaos, his eyesight becomes dim. Shneimar, as it says regarding Yitzchak, Vayihi ki zoken Yitzchak, vatechehena einov mira'os. And why did his eyes become weak? Mishum de istakel, in his own son, but who was then a Rasha, Be'esav a Rasha, asks the Gemara, whoa, that's the reason why Yitzchak Avinu became blind. But did we not learn Amar Rab Yitzchak that La'olam al tihi kilalas hedyet kala beinacham? Even if a commoner gives a curse, don't take it lightly. And we learned that from Avimelech, that he cursed Sarah, which is a drasha. The pshat was he didn't curse her. And then Eskayim Bezara, the curse came to fruition by Yitzchak. Shneimar, when it says, when Avimelech gave money to Avraham after he found out that Sarah is his wife, so it says, Hinehu l'cha ksus inayim, this money will be as an appeasement. Literally, ksus means a garment. That's the pshat. And Chazal say, Al teikra ksus ela kesiyai sinayim, this will be a covering to your eyes. He was meramis to a curse. He was cursing Avraham and Sarah, that you tripped me up, you didn't tell me the truth, that she's your sister, she's your wife. You know what? May your eyes be covered. And that came true. So that's the kasha. So that's why Yitzchak became blind. Answers the Gemara, Hava Hagar Molei. We just had this a few days ago regarding Levi, right? Levi showed the kida and he became lame. And the Gemara in Tainis, Hava Hagar Molei. Rava Amar, that this midah of not looking in the face of a Rasha is mehachem. Se'ez Penei Rasha loitoiv. Again, the pshat is that giving regard, giving chashivus to the face of a Rasha is not good. The Rasha se'es means to gaze. And I just want to say, as a pro, we are lucky, Ashreinu, all types of people walked by the Rebbe. One of the things, when the Rebbe looked at a Yid, the Rebbe saw their godly soul. He never saw the Rasha, and you felt it. So, when you interact with a person, for us, if it's a Yid, there are exceptions. If you see the person's wickedness, when you look at another Jew and you see his riches, that's what cuts your life. That's what makes you blind. God gave you eyes not to see the riches of your fellow. God gave you eyes to see the tzidkis of your fellow. Weiter. Now, b'shas petirasei. This is all Rebbe and Rabbi Shua ben Karcha. So when he departed, so Amalei, so Rebbe asked from Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, Rebbe Barcheni. Rebbe wanted to live a long life. Amalei, to which Rabbi Shua ben Karcha says, you should live half of my life. So Rebbe says, what, like, why, you can't give me a bracha to live the same amount of years that you live? Amalei, to which Rabbi Shua ben Karcha responded, what, haboyim acharecha behema yiru? May your children graze animals. And like Rashi says, that Rabbeinu HaKadosh in particular, who had the position of being the leader of the Jewish people, and Bachlal leadership halachically goes down to children, as does Yerusha, if they are God-fearing, which means that the sons of Rebbe, as we learn in the Sugya, Ashkafta, the Rebbe and Ksubas, they taka were his Mamala Makim, but they are only be able to be his Mamala Makim after Rebbe passes away. If Rebbe would have lived a long life like Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, then his children would never have the opportunity to fulfill their mission at their time of being the leader. So certain people cannot live that length because they are, so to say, taking away from the years of leadership that was given to their children. Let's go weiter. Abua bar Ihi and Minyamin bar Ihi. Chad Amar once says, Teisali. Teisali, it's sekuntmir. It's sekuntmir oilam haba, or sekuntmir a long life. Some merit, some reward is coming to me because the loy is takli bekuti. I never looked at a kuti. And v'chad Amar Teisali the loy of the shutfas bahada kuti. I never made a partnership, even though sometimes you're not allowed to make a partnership with an idol worshiper, because if there is a machlokes in business, normally you will have to take an oath, or he will take an oath, and he's going to evoke his getchke. But you can make a partnership b'tanai that no one will swear by a god other than the Eibishter. He never had a partnership not to ever afford a possibility of someone taking an oath in the name of an idol. Let's go weiter. Talmid of Rab Zera. I never expressed anger in my home. So outside one's home, people are more careful. In the home, at times, a person might get angry. He never expressed anger. That's what gave him a long life. Number two, I never walked in front of someone who was greater than me. When I was walking with people in the street, if I considered them greater, I walked, a step behind. And number three, when I was walking by an alleyway or a location where there was a bad odor, or there was a church whose gate was opened, even though by the letter of the law, the limitations is only not to be allowed to say words of Torah or say words of tefillah, but one is allowed to be mahared. That's the way we paskin. He went beyond the letter of the law, and for him it was very difficult. He didn't even think words of kedusha, out of respect to the words of Kedusha. And v'lo hilachti daladamas, I never walked 4 cubits below Torah, below tefillin. Now here it's almost a contradiction, because if he didn't walk daladamas below Torah, so how do you reconcile that he never even thought? Forget about speaking. But he didn't walk; he flew there. I never slept in a house of study. Not only never a shinas keva, but not even a shinas arai. Another I never rejoiced in the downfall of my fellow. And going back to a thing we had in the beginning, I never used a nickname, as we learned in the beginning of the sugya of Amri law, that he said the final good beyond the letter of the law. I never called a person by their family name. Here, the Rishonim say using someone's family name is only problematic if it's a derogatory family name. If it's not, there's no problem. But a nickname, just concluding with that, the power of a Jewish name and the chashivus beyond the letter of the law, right? That to use our Jewish names, and according to many, at least some of it, if not all of it. Let's chaparai. I know it's late. Let's at least learn the Mishnah. Now we're learning about the holiness of a Beis HaKnesses, the behavior. Says the Mishnah, V'oid Amar Rabbi Yehuda. If you remember, the Rabbi Yehuda that we learned today began the way we explained, with the stringency, that when you sell a shul, you have to say we're selling it for it to be used for something other than a shul. If you don't say that, then you have to use it for a shul. Another chumrah, that we have a Beis HaKnesses, even shecharav, even if it's laying in ruins, Ein maspidin betoicha. You're not allowed to use that locality to eulogize a ordinary person. Now we're going to learn, God willing, tomorrow that when you have a big Talmud Chacham, they dafke would eulogize him in a shul because that's the rabbim is coming. But you were not allowed to eulogize a ordinary person where few people come. So you don't need the large room in a Beis HaKnesses. Is another thing. We're not learning about a Beis HaMedrash. We're learning about a Beis HaKnesses, a house that's designated primarily to be used to pray. So Rabbi Yehuda says, even if it's in ruins and it's convenient, it's like a big empty space, don't use it for the eulogy of a private person. Don't twist ropes. Don't spread nets. These are mundane activities in which you need to have a large area. That's a large area. Don't even spread on the roof of a ruin of a Beis HaKnesses. Fruits to dry. The ein oisen kapandaria. Don't use it as a shortcut. Again, even though it's a churva. Shneimar, as it says, when it says in the Teichachan b'chukoisai that vahashi moisi es migdashechem, that God forbid I will make desolate your holy places. Your holy places doesn't only mean the Beis HaMikdash, but Mikdash Ma'at. So the Mishnah says beautiful. What we see here is that even when it's vahashi moisi, even when it's desolate, it's still called holy. Going back to the Yid, that even a Yid that's desolate is still holy. Every Yid is a tzaddik. Malayas mitzvah skeriben, that kiddushason, that the kedusha of the place is af kasheim shoymimim. And the final din in the Mishnah that olav yasavim, if grass is beginning to grow in it, lo yitloish, don't uproot it, even though you are uprooting it to give honor to the place. Don't do that. Mipnei agmas nefesh, you want to inspire grief. Wow. And if you remember, we learned on Daf Tezvav Amud Beis, right, the 10 Tanoim, I think it was the 7th, Rab Shimon ben Menashe, I think he says that why did Esther invite Haman? So the Oibishter should say, Oy Gewalt, we came to the point where Esther has to make friendly with Hitler, with Haman. In other words, when people see that this shul is filled with grass, they're going to be so broken. They're going to say, you know what, we got to fix the shul. So you're not allowed to disrespect it. But if naturally it's degraded, leave it in a degraded state. People will feel bad, and they're going to rebuild it, God willing, to be continued. And the Eibishter should look right now. That's the point. Look at the Makom HaMikdash. How degrading is it? That people that are bowing down in another direction with their backsides to the Shechina, that the Ula Yargish Hamakim and will have Rachmanis on himself and will bring Mashiach now. Amen. To be continued.